Welcome, everybody, to our live Southern California law firm info networking session. My name is Albert from Summer Associate Hub. This is the last episode of our fantastic Summer Associate Hub 2024 live virtual location series, where students can learn about what it's like to work as a big law attorney in different locations. Last, but certainly not least, I, for one, constantly wonder why I don't live in Southern California. The weather reports from all of our participants right now is validating that. So I'm sure the helpful panel tonight will be great. So we have a great group of attorneys. I'm excited to get into it. So the agenda is as follows. Those of you who have been on our sessions over the last few weeks are familiar with this. We'll have a panel discussion featuring our attorneys from Manatt, Troutman, Pepper, and Alan Matkins. That will be about 30 to 40 minutes, including Q&A. After the panel discussion, each firm will host a separate Zoom room for those who want to join, ask questions, or listen to hear more about the firm. Some great connections have come out of those breakout rooms, so definitely recommend joining. In the meantime, you can use the Q&A function to ask questions for the panel generally, and we'll tee those up at the end. Before we wrap up the panel discussion, we'll also have some prize raffles for firm-sponsored swag. Firm swag is the best thing, so stay tuned and make sure you're here. You have to be present to win, and we'll be calling your name out on the air. So don't go anywhere. Make sure you're here if you sign up for the raffle. Before we jump in, quick intro. What is Summer Associate Hub? Summer Associate Hub is a free content and resource hub for law students embarking on the 1L and 2L recruiting process. I'm a former law student and big law associate. We know here from our experience how hard it is as a 1L to understand what it's really like to work at a law firm. Our platform, summerassociatehub.com, has blog posts, podcast episodes, short video tutorials and exercises, interviews with attorneys, and other content to help you learn about practice areas and prepare for the recruiting process. We also host virtual programs like this, where students can easily learn directly from attorneys and network with them virtually from around the country, as well as recruiting team members. Although our live virtual location and practice area series are coming to an end this week, we will have some more programs coming up after finals to help you with the recruiting process, so stay tuned on that. Our final session of our series is tomorrow night, Private Equity Fund Formation Practice Showcase. So if you haven't already RSVP'd, you could do that. We'll post the link in the chat. Anyway, the best way to stay updated is sign up for our newsletter, summerassociatehub.com/newsletter. If you signed up for this event, don't worry, we already added you to the newsletter. Share it with your friends. We have all fun prizes for referrals. All right, so let's get into it. Instead of me introducing everyone, I'll let them introduce themselves. So I guess, Rachel, let's start with you. Tell us about yourself, about your practice, and briefly why you chose to practice in Southern California.
Great, thanks, Albert. My name is Rachel Sanders. I'm a litigation partner at the law firm of Alan Matkins. We are a California-based firm. We have 5 offices here in California and 1 in the state of New York. I am a general business litigator, although I have a particular specialty in commercial real estate litigation. That's anything from commercial landlord-tenant disputes to construction disputes to partnership disputes where the primary partnership asset is real estate. So I do a lot of everything, mostly commercial real estate based. I love being in Southern California, or the reason I'm here, I should say, is because I'm from Southern California. I grew up in Thousand Oaks, which is about 40 miles outside of downtown LA. And even though I went to undergrad and law school outside of Southern California, I think that all just kind of cemented for me that I wanted to come back to the sunshine, and I've been here since I graduated in 2008, and I'm loving it.
Great. Viral, on to you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mehta. I'm a litigation partner at Manatt, Phelps & Phillips. I'm based in our Los Angeles and Orange County office. I split time between the two, but primarily I'm in Los Angeles, which is in Century City, technically. I started off as a general litigator at Manatt, but over the years, kind of like Rachel, I've formulated an expertise in real estate litigation. So oftentimes that involves development disputes, real estate investors, or joint ventures that have disputes, but it also delves into eminent domain and kind of bet the company taking types cases, which happen from time to time. I primarily am interested in trial work, and that's what attracted me to real estate litigation because also like Rachel, I graduated in 2008 and it was the recession, and there were a lot of real estate disputes that went to trial, and that's what I wanted to do. And I'm in LA because I grew up here. I'm from Bellflower and Cerritos, which is if you're familiar with the area, it's borderline LA, Orange County, and which is kind of why I split the time. And went to undergrad here, went to law school in Boston, liked the city, but 3 years was good with the weather, and I was ready to come back home.
Great. Jordan, on to you.
Hi, I'm Jordan Jeffery. I'm a senior associate at Troutman Pepper in the San Diego office. For those familiar with the area, we are located up in Del Mar. My practice, I'm also a litigator, like everyone else on the call, though I'm in the specialized litigation department at Troutman, and I focus on insurance litigation, disputes over coverage for different types of policies, directors and officers, professional liability. But most of my cases are about environmental cleanup actions, fights over who's going to pay to clean up a site where there used to be a chemical plant or a sawmill or something that the EPA or state agencies are targeting. And so there ends up being a lot of disputes over how that gets funded. And a lot of times insurance is involved. And so that's my bread and butter most days. As with everyone else, I ended up in San Diego in Southern California because I grew up here. I'm Encinitas was my old stomping grounds. Moved around the country for many years before I decided to go to law school, and knew I wanted to end up back in California after living on the East Coast for a bit. And I graduated in 2014 and got a job down in San Diego and have been here since.
Great. So Jordan, we'll stick with you. I guess first question within your practice, I guess what are the clients and the industries that make up the legal market, and how does your location in San Diego and Southern California more broadly play into your practice specifically?
So my practice is a little bit interesting because Troutman Pepper, we are an insurer side practice, which means most of our clients are large nationwide insurance companies, which means that a lot of our clients may not be located in San Diego, but a lot of times they get sued here. And they issue policies all over the country and they get sued here. And this may dovetail into some of our later conversations, but for my practice in particular, I end up working with partners and teams across the country and have cases across the country, but I get to live in San Diego while I do it. So it's a pretty nice deal there. For the rest of the San Diego office, though, there is a lot of connection to the local market, which in San Diego, there's a lot of biotech startups and other technology startup companies, particularly North County. So we, in the San Diego office, we've got an IP practice, intellectual property practice that works with that, a lot of real estate transaction work and financing work that really connect with a lot of these startup companies and companies in those areas that have that local need. But we like to offer that large nationwide firm, but with that local connection for those folks.
So Rachel and Viral, how about you? So you both work in real estate litigation as a specialty, as well as some other general litigation. How does the SoCal legal market look, and how does the location in SoCal play into that?
Yeah, I think, just being in Los Angeles, it's a major market, so you necessarily attract, local developers and companies, but oftentimes it is a national company, Fortune 500 companies, international companies and investment funds. In Los Angeles, at least in the last 5 to 10 years, a lot of the Silicon Valleys have set up shop in Silicon Beach, and any company has real estate holdings, or banks have real estate investments. So it's oftentimes early in my career, I represented banks. These days, it's more so companies, typically Fortune 500 companies. And then you also have these real estate investment ventures. You could have a joint venture, you could have tax credits, all kinds of things with real estate, and that does kind of open up the international market as well.
Yeah, I would say being in a real estate focused practice, it's a good place to be in Southern California, right? There's a lot of development, there's a lot of construction, there's a lot of just buildings that already exist here, and people are going to have disputes with tenants in their buildings. So for me, just in terms of my clients in the industries, it's good to be in a place that has a lot of development. I probably could not do this job if I lived, in a rural community in Texas, for example. So there's every company has, often companies have real estate needs, right? So even if you are a life sciences company, you need lab space, you need research space, and you need to get real estate in order to do that. So we can be flexible in terms of who we're representing because a lot of people have real estate needs. I'm fortunate enough that I represent clients up and down the state of California. I have a lot of cases going on up in San Francisco, so I'm up there pretty frequently. It's fun to be able to travel up there, see my friends up there. So I don't feel like I'm necessarily restricted to Southern California, but because there's development happening all over the state, I'm lucky that my practice can take me outside of Southern California.
Yeah, and to piggyback on that, I think one important issue, we're not saying it, but it's so obvious, which is in these markets we're talking about, real estate is just very valuable. And so when we're talking about disputes that arise from it, they tend to be high stakes and would come to a firm like ours.
Yeah, that's a great point. So I guess Rachel and Viral will stay with you. I guess tell what's something that's important for law students, and usually a common question is, what's it like to work for a firm within the headquarters, working for a firm in an office that's outside the headquarters. So I guess tell us more about what it's like to be working in Southern California for a firm that's headquartered, on the West Coast.
Sure, I'll answer. It would have been hard for me to answer that, I think, before we opened our New York office. It's been sort of interesting to see, I guess, sort of the culture difference. I definitely think that being a West Coast firm, we're a little bit more laid back. With that said, we represent big national clients. And so for me as a litigator, I'm often not having to be on calls before 8:30 a.m. But our transactional attorneys who are working with big real estate investment companies that are based in New York, they're going to have to sort of adjust their schedules as necessary to work with those clients. But for me as a litigator, because we only practice in California, I anyway, I'm only barred and licensed in California. It's been pretty, laid back and nice for me. I think that's the big difference, between the fact that we're primarily headquartered on the West Coast and not in the Midwest or in the East Coast.
Yeah, I think speaking from my experience in Manatt as well, being that the LA office is the headquarter office, I think all the other offices kind of take on the vibe of whatever the headquarters are. And being that the headquarters is in Los Angeles, I think the vibe is a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more casual. We all have, serious matters and cases, but the other offices, when I talk to my New York colleagues, they're not like some of my colleagues or opposing counsel that may be from a firm that's New York based. I mean, there is a different vibe to it. And for me personally, when I was in the position, I was a summer associate at Manatt. And so when I was making the decision, one of like my 2 or 3 most important boxes to check was being in the headquartered office, because it is the nerve center. It's where the decision makers largely reside. And I had exposure to those people. Like the head of litigation was in the LA office, the managing partner was in the LA office. So I got to not only see those people day to day, but end up working with them, and they knew me and I learned from them. So there were all those benefits starting off. And so I thought that was really important to me as a young attorney.
And just to add to that, you made me think of something. Our firm is headquartered in our LA office, but our managing partner, for example, is based down in our San Diego office. Because we are primarily based in California, our culture, and something that you think about once you're coming up for partner, is, are you working with people across offices, right? I don't know how important that is in other law firms, but certainly at Allen Matkins, it's important because these are the people who will eventually vote on your partnership candidacy once it's time for that. And being able to travel amongst the offices, get to know the partners at other offices, is really valuable for our senior associates as they're starting to think about going up for partnership. And being able to focus that on California offices instead of having to travel across the country is really nice.
That's great. So Jordan, I guess opposite, Troutman is based on the East Coast. You're in San Diego. So tell us more about what that's like.
Yeah, so Troutman is, you could almost say, double based on the East Coast because Troutman Pepper was the result of a merger between an Atlanta-based firm and a Philly-based firm in 2020. So, and I was here, I was with the Troutman half before the merger, so I've been able to experience that happening. And there is definitely that locus of there's a lot more offices on the East Coast than the West Coast, but and there is that the managing partners out there on the East Coast, which is actually, I think it's kind of nice because we get to be out here in San Diego with a little bit of smaller office. There's a number of offices in California and up the West Coast, Orange County, LA, San Francisco, and Portland. And so we have this West Coast contingent. And so at times it can feel like you're in a smaller firm that is the West Coast branch and have those local connections and work in a small office in San Diego where there's 20 to 30 attorneys and working professionals and then additional support staff. And you have a very intimate vibe of I'm here in the small office. I have a lot of direct mentor relationships with the partners I'm working for. I'm getting to work with and getting to know people in other practice groups that I wouldn't necessarily be connecting with as much on a day-to-day basis if you're at a big headquarter office. But at the same time, I have got connections to all these connections to the East Coast offices, these huge offices up and down the Eastern Seaboard, and I'm able to take advantage of that expertise and mentorship opportunities on a large scale as well. So we are able to preserve a little bit different vibe than most of the rest of the firm, I will say. The California vibe wins out, whether you're California based or just a California office and an East Coast based firm. That's the power of California right there. But that's kind of my experience being in a smaller office of an East Coast firm.
It's in the California air, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess stepping away from work just for a second and thinking about kind of more, I guess, personal life, family life. One thing that's often helpful in thinking about where to live is not just about the work experience, but just where people live, what it's like to live there. So I'm curious to hear from all of you. What has it been like for you living in Southern California now as a young professional or with a family? Tell us a little bit more about that for the benefit of our audience.
I'll jump in. I love living in Southern California. And I don't know if it's because I, went to school outside of Southern California that really made me kind of appreciate home and wanting to come back here. But I love it. The legal profession is very stressful, no matter what you do, whether you go to a law firm, whether you're in house, whether you're in a government position. It's just stressful. It's the reality of the situation, and that's the fact. Even if you love everyone you work with, and you otherwise love your job, it can just get stressful. So it's important to, in my mind, live in a place where you are happy to be living. I love Southern California because I can take weekend trips to San Diego, to Joshua Tree, to the Bay Area. There's a lot of opportunity to get out, even if you only have 2 days or maybe a long weekend to get away. You cannot beat the weather. You can't beat a trip to the beach. I say all that, living in Los Angeles, where I sometimes I joke that when I date somebody on the other side of town, it's like a long distance relationship. So that's like another thing to keep in mind as well. Just because two people are in Los Angeles, it can still take you an hour and a half to get to where they are. Same, with my downtown office to my Century City office, for example. But for me, living in Southern California, just for the state of mind that it puts me in, the beautiful weather that we have most of the time, it's really good for my mental health when you have that stress of work and business, just how it is.
Yeah, I would echo everything Rachel just said. I mean, it's really hard to beat, and I've traveled to all our other offices, and they're all great, but you can't beat LA, Orange County, and San Diego. And for me, at least for more specific experience, I started off living very near the office, and LA, all the neighborhoods. There's tons of apartments for young professionals when you start off. Lots of like food, restaurants, bars, gyms that are all kind of close by and kind of part of like for example in Century City, which you see behind me in the background, it is kind of this self-enclosed city in and of itself, even though it's really not a city, it's just a neighborhood. But you could stay just there and get really good food, drinks, a workout, live there. And so it's very convenient, especially when you're young. I wanted to be close to the office, but then LA also gives you this opportunity where, you know, it's so spread out that as I grew older and you get married and you have kids, it's really a place where you could grow. And there are these different neighborhoods and enclaves where you could branch out to and still be in the Century City office or even Orange County.
Although I see in your background the hotel where I took the bar exam. Give you more of a flashback.
Yeah, I also took the bar up in LA, so I feel you there. Yeah. Yeah, everybody, I agree with what everyone's been saying, Rachel, Farrell. Uh, California is a great place to live. San Diego, I'll chime in for that in particular. Most of the law firms are starting to be located in the North County area around Del Mar. And so you'll have people who go farther north, which can be very suburban. And if you're looking for, families and that lifestyle, suburban lifestyle, it's there. There's a lot of people who also live south of the firm going more towards the city itself, areas that have more of that college town vibe that are closer to like SDSU and things like that. So you can go in either direction from where most of the law firms are located in the San Diego market now and kind of get that living experience that you want for the different times in your life or your career. So, or you can try to be as close to the office as possible to cut down on your commute. Be like, I'll be in the office in 5 minutes. Just hop on over. So that's nice.
Yeah, so I guess so Jordan, let's stay with you. Jumping back to work. So in your view, I guess, how does the Southern California legal market and maybe San Diego specifically, how does it differ from some of the other large markets from your perspective? I guess maybe in comparison to the East Coast, since you probably work with some colleagues on the East Coast.
Yeah, I will say that I think that in the West, it's probably true of a lot of the West Coast markets, but in San Diego in particular, uh, there are a lot of in terms of the local markets, it's a lot of startup companies or younger companies that are looking for that sort of support. There's a couple of larger companies that have been around for a long time, like Qualcomm and stuff, that are based in San Diego, but you do see a lot more on the front end of companies that are looking to grow and looking for law firms to help them out with the problems that companies have early on. And that's true for, I think, a lot more of my colleagues in the San Diego office than myself, because my practice leans towards large companies that have a national platform. So for me, the San Diego specific market is less important so much as just having the connection with the partners and the practice groups that I want to work with and having those mentor relationships, because on any given day, my docket is on cases that are scattered across the country in places that none of us have offices, but that's just where the case takes you. So there's a lot of flexibility to be like, you can live in San Diego and work on cases that are anywhere, which is a nice deal if you can get it.
Great. So I guess Rachel and Varel, tell us a little bit more about how you see the Southern California market as compared to other legal markets, whether that's on the East Coast or also within California in the Bay Area, for example.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's LA is similar to what Jordan was describing, where, you know, I've litigated cases in New York and Texas, um, in all parts of California, Arizona, Nevada. I guess in my personal experience, at least, you know, I think what the LA market offers is a ton of variety. I mean, when I speak to colleagues and folks like in New York or DC, you know, they obviously have high stakes cases and serious matters with large companies and clients, but they tend to have an expertise and, you know, might be finance or a certain industry that's there. But, you know, what I do like about my job, and especially in LA, even if it's just in real estate litigation or something else, just the amount of variety where it could just be different types of clients and different types of sectors, you know, startups all the way to, like, you know, banks that have been around for 100+ years. I think LA does kind of offer this unique opportunity that I don't see anywhere, maybe San Francisco, but between LA and San Francisco, just a kind of the full panoply of options in terms of different types of legal matters that kind of come across your desk.
Do you think it's harder and harder to differentiate between legal markets these days, just because, as technology has advanced and our practice areas have developed, it's just easier to practice other than in your home base? So that's a really interesting question. Certainly as a litigator, there are a lot of differences in terms of procedure. You're practicing in courts in New York, it's going to be procedurally very, very different from what you're used to in California. But as far as the client base, as far as the legal market itself, I think boundaries are just getting blurred. And that's the great thing is, you can live in Southern California, you can live in Los Angeles, and you can take on these cases elsewhere. That has also been my experience. I mentioned earlier, all my cases up in San Francisco, I'm up there probably once a month, which is great because I have friends and I have family up there, and it's always a good excuse to see and visit with them when it's, you have to be up there for a client related issue. So I think the lines are getting blurred. I'm curious to know, Albert, in other programs that you put on in other jurisdictions or other areas, do people feel differently from us?
Spoken like a true lawyer. This is our jurisdiction series. Actually, so that's actually something I was about to mention. That definitely a common theme throughout our location series, which some of the students who've been on multiple sessions may have noticed. I think something that we're seeing is, maybe when thinking as a law student, when thinking about a location, maybe think more about, is that a place you want to live? Because it sounds like generally, especially at firms with multiple offices, like the ones that are on this session, is usually opportunities to do work across offices in different places, including for litigation, which sometimes is counterintuitive when folks assume that you have to be litigating in the local courts or be licensed in a certain jurisdiction. But something that we've learned both from the litigation and transactional side in these sessions is that it's pretty easy to practice in different jurisdictions and across offices, and the location of your office may not matter as much. Yeah, so definitely a common theme.
Yeah, one thing that kind of occurred to me in this conversation too, and this kind of goes back to one of the prior questions is, again, this is just what I've seen in my experience, but it's kind of the selling point of Southern California where, and it's important these days, especially if I'm a young attorney like the folks listening in today. It's like, are people going into the office? And once you're in LA, you want to get out. I like going to the office. I don't, right now there's a lot of people who want to work remotely and they like that, which I understand. But as a young attorney, I know it was invaluable for me to get into the office and see people and get opportunities. And at least I just feel like while some other regions might be doing it because it's required or mandatory, in LA, people do want to get out and go to the office because the weather is nice and there's things to do. And so I think that's been a positive from a mental health and kind of energy standpoint.
Yeah. In San Diego, we can see the ocean from our office. I can't see it from my house. So if I want to go see the ocean, go to the office.
That's nice. Yeah, I mean, as far as location goes, you want to live where you're happy to live, because if you're miserable with your living situation, the city that you're in, it's going to be really hard to be happy at the office, even if everything is going well and going smoothly. But with that said, you also need to be mindful of the fact that you want, if your goal is to be a practicing lawyer, you also have to be mindful that you need to go where there is a job market. You don't want to go to rural Texas if you want to be, representing people in construction disputes, for example, what I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Mental health means a lot in this profession. So you should target for yourself the place that you think you'll be happiest.
Yeah. And then pick a place you'll be happy, and then look at firms that have people who do the work you want to do there. Because if you find someone in San Diego or LA who does the type of work you think you want to do and you'd be happy there, you can live there and work with that team, and you'll probably end up taking cases all around the country. But it's all about finding a team you want to work with that does what you want to do, and a place you want to live and protect your mental health.
It doesn't sound like any of us have transferred cities since we started working. I mean, that's another thing to keep in mind is, you know, if you accept a job in Chicago and you hate Chicago, the longer you work there, the harder it's going to be for you to transfer to Los Angeles or to San Francisco or wherever it is that you want to be. So something else to keep in mind.
Yeah, or something else to keep in mind when you're looking at a firm is what are those transfer opportunities like? Maybe asking those questions. To that point, Rachel, it's a great point. Maybe asking those questions at the outset, because if you're from California and you want to try it out in New York in the big city for a couple of years and move back home, understanding what that transfer process would be like at your firm is important. It may save you some heartache later. So that's a great point, Rachel.
Yeah, and I could, you know, at Manatt at least, I've seen it happen several times where people do switch offices. But I agree with what everyone said. You know, I'm personally a creature of habit. Obviously, I've been at the same firm forever, not just because I'm a creature of habit, but I do love the firm. But where do you see yourself in a few years? And you know, I mentioned earlier that I wanted to go to the headquarters, but I also had ties to Orange County, and I could see myself moving down there when I got older and had a family, and that's exactly what I did. And so, even though I'm in Orange County, I do split time between the LA and Orange County offices. So there are those opportunities.
Yeah. So just a reminder, before we wrap up, if you have any questions, pop them in the Q&A. It's all anonymous, unless you tell us you don't want to be anonymous, but it's all anonymous. Just pop the questions in the Q&A. We'll tee them up before we wrap up. So I guess before we move on to the end of our session, one question was an interesting one to always ask on these sessions. What are some common exit opportunities for big law attorneys within Southern California in your practice area? And for the students listening, exit opportunities oftentimes refers to, you know, what are the opportunities that come after you're at the firm? And, you know, obviously when you're looking at firms and firms are looking at you, the goal is that you stay forever. Like Virgil just mentioned, he's been at, you know, same firm forever, which not forever, we're still here, but you know, you want to make sure it's a place that you can stay for a long time. But that doesn't always happen. And sometimes a law firm is the first step to a successful career doing other things. So what are some of the exit opportunities that you've seen, maybe from former colleagues or friends in Southern California within your practice area?
Well, I've seen a lot of friends go it outside of my practice area and in it is go in-house to clients,
Mhm.
whether that means locally to companies that they've been working with as either litigation counsel or on transactions. Eventually, they end up with a working relationship that's so good, they're like, hey, why don't we just pay you directly and you come into our office instead? So I've definitely seen that come a lot of times in the insurance market in particular. I've seen that happen um, going into large healthcare insurers often are looking for a robust general counsel's office. So if you're in insurance litigation, there actually are opportunities there. And then occasionally you see laterals going to different firms as well. But those are the main exit opportunities I've seen. But a lot of through lines from firm to client, and the relationships continue to exist.
Yeah, one of the positives that I've seen at Manatt is I don't see, of course it happens, it's a big firm, but less people just leaving Manatt to go to another big firm that's like a comparable firm or a competitor. Obviously, a lot of people go in-house, and there's a ton of in-house opportunities, especially in the real estate world, between developers, you know, real estate divisions of big companies like Facebook or something like that, or Meta now, I guess. Banks, but you know, I've also seen more entrepreneurial kind of avenues where folks have gone out and started their own practice and set up their own shop. They've started their own businesses, some of which have been legally related or not. And so I think so, you know, some have gone into government or public interest. So you know, I do think it gives you that good foundation of seeing what's out there and making relationships and figuring out what you want if this isn't what you want to do in the long term. And so it's been pretty cool to see just kind of the variety of options people have chosen to take.
The only thing I would add, because my experience has been very, very similar to both of yours, is that I've seen kind of a shocking number of colleagues who have left to join clients, but not even in a legal capacity. They are joining the business side of things. And that's always great because it means that that person has gotten to know their client so well that they're able to bring value and strategy when it comes to the business, not just litigation. So I think that that's a really unique and cool exit opportunity that I wasn't even aware of before I was out on Matkins.
That's a great point. It's something I always think is important to mention on these sessions is the kind of the versatility that you have with the JD is really incredible, and you can do a lot of different things with that, whether it's within the legal world or also in the business world. And I think going in house, like you mentioned, Rachel, even in a business role, is something that's very common and something to keep in mind as a student. Great. So we're moving on to our last question, which is always a lot of fun. Giving everybody a chance to plug their firm before we head out to the breakout rooms. Just a reminder, everyone, to check the Word document in the chat. All the links to the breakout rooms are there. And then I'm also going to post this in the chat one more time for the Zoom links. But if you need, you could just use the Word document. Okay, so. We also have some fun prize raffle, so we'll do that as we go. So I guess Viral, we'll start with you. Now's your chance to plug the firm in 30 seconds or less. Why should a student choose your firm? And I'll say one thing for everyone. Our rule here at Summer Associate Hub, I think a lot of the viewers are familiar with this now. Our rule is you can't say it's the people, because that seems to always be the answer when you're a 1L going through interviews and networking events. So that can't be the answer. So Viral, let's start with you.
So I guess my pitch would start with just my experience, which is, I was a summer associate at Manatt. I was a baby attorney and grew up and made partner here. And I'm not alone. I mean, I haven't seen many firms of Manatt's size that have partners and senior partners who've been with the firm almost their entire career or their entire career. Our former managing partner was a summer associate at the firm. But putting that aside, the biggest thing for me personally was I wanted to quote unquote be in the big leagues and be at a big law firm doing, major matters. But I also wanted to do real work. And that's been the biggest thing for me at Manatt is since I was a first year, while they might be a bigger firm, they don't just throw 10 attorneys on a case to throw 10 attorneys on a case. Cases are typically leanly staffed. And that meant, I was in court my first year. I was taking depositions within the first couple of years. I was, on a trial team very early on and took trials earlier than some of my colleagues. So that's what I really appreciated about Manatt, which is not just the culture and the people and all that, but I also got to do what I wanted to do when I was in law school and not have to just do document review or something like that.
Great. So we have a Manatt sponsored prize, a bag with a bunch of firm brand swag. Always great stuff. Gems, if you're with us, please let us know in the Q&A. You have to be present to win, so let us know in the Q&A if you're here. All right, moving on to the next one. Rachel, 30 seconds or less. Why should a student choose Allen Matkins?
Even though Allen Matkins is a full service law firm, we're kind of known as the preeminent real estate firm on the West Coast. So if you have any interest whatsoever in being a real estate litigator, being a real estate transactional attorney, being a tax attorney that focuses on joint ventures related to real estate holding groups, we're the firm for you. I mean, there is something to be said about, looking out my window and saying, I've litigated over that building. It's tangible. It's very, very different from doing securities litigation, for example, where everything seems so, not tangible and ephemeral. And you can't point to something and say, I did that. I worked on that. So Allen Matkins, for sure, if you are at all interested in real estate. And I know I can't say the people, so I'll just say the crazies at this firm. I love them, and even though this is my third legal job, this is where I've been since 2011, and it's where I intend to be until I retire. And you'll see my claw marks on the desk as they have to drag me out.
Fantastic. And we have an Allen Matkins sponsored drink tumbler. Always useful. Noel, Francis, if you're with us, please let us know. All right, Jordan, I guess finish us off 30 seconds or less. Why should a student choose Troutman Pepper?
So I lateraled over to Troutman Pepper, and the thing that I found immediately was true was that they gave you the opportunities that you wanted, that the partners cared about actual mentorship both formally and informally, checking in with you and making sure you got every opportunity you wanted to do. I went from a AmLaw top 10 firm to Troutman, and at Troutman, I've got him to do all the fun stuff, depositions, trial, take witnesses at trial, all of that stuff that you don't necessarily get to do, as Viral was mentioning, when at a firm that throws 10 attorneys on a case. At Troutman, you get those opportunities. And because it's a firm that has such a huge national footprint, there are a lot of opportunities. You can have those small, close relationships in a small office. You can have the reach of a national firm that has offices all over the country. And so, and that with that flexibility and that mentorship, that really make sure you get to try out the different opportunities, especially for those coming up through the summer programs. Making you get to try out all the different experiences. You get to pick from a book of business, different pieces, and see what it's like. And we're going to put you straight into it, doing meaningful work on real substantive cases.
Great. We have Troutman sponsored Yeti mug with a gift card. And our winner is Vanessa Dingillo. If you're here, Vanessa, let us know, please, in the Q&A. Well, this is a really interesting conversation. Thanks everybody for taking the time. Like I mentioned, it definitely validated my my sadness of not living in Southern California, but it's okay. And I appreciate all the students who joined. Our breakout rooms are going to be open in a second, hosted by each firm. I definitely recommend students to join, ask questions. One thing I always like to say is don't squat. Join a firm's breakout room, and then try to visit more than one, especially as our attorneys are taking time out of their evening to join us and hear from different perspectives and from different firms. This is the last session of our location series. If you missed our prior ones between the location series or the practice area series, it's okay. They're all recorded. They're on summerassociatehub.com/video library. So just take a look at our site, find the video library, and you could watch all of the different content there. Thanks again to this wonderful panel, and please join us in the breakout rooms. Thank you.
Thanks.